Archbishop Andrew Kea called on Cameroonians to take their responsibilities into their hands. Are Cameroonians gone past the elections of October 12, 2025? That question lingers. Some people are still talking about the elections, but Paul Biya and his government believe that the elections are history and they are looking into the future. Today with me on the Beyond Africa podcast is Professor Ben Aki, who responded to Archbishop Nkea, as he is a member of the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon. He's here to tell us about his harsh and critical response to Archbishop Nkea and what the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon is doing to say, how he puts it, liberate Cameroon. You are welcome to the Beyond Africa podcast with me, your host, Ngalim Bernard. At the Beyond Africa podcast, we share African stories that change lives. Professor Aki, you are welcome back to the Beyond Africa podcast.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bernard. Welcome for having me here again for this discussion. I think you're playing a very important role to bring difficult topics and topics that are very informative on the politics of Cameroon to the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you so much. When you make yourself the topic of conversation on social media platforms over a week or two, you definitely deserve a platform like this to explain yourself, because you've become critical to the extent that people are wondering if this is the Ben Aki they have been hearing about over the last 9 or so years.
Well, I think I'm a political activist. I am not a politician. And the way a political activist operates is to try to bring issues to the conscience of the public and try to help the public to decide and act in a way that is going to advance their interest. We have no power but the power of convincing the people to see their interest, or the power of convincing those who have power to use that power for the benefit of the population. So we try to influence the actions of opinion leaders or those who have any power to take actions that will benefit the vast majority. And one of the things you would do as an activist is to be provocative, because if you're provocative, then what you have to say, people will have to filter out to see what is the actual substance here and what here is just maybe a little bit of clickbait, or what here is actually the message you're trying to get across. And so
I don't get you here. Are you saying that your response to the Archbishop was simply being provocative, or you are actually advancing a point concerning the governance of Cameroon?
I'm advancing a point about the governance of Cameroon, which is so complicated to understand that people don't want to talk about it because it has a taboo element to it. And that
then why did you have to be so harsh and critical in your words, in your choice of words?
You will have to help me to understand what aspect of the communication can be considered very harsh, because most of it correlates with what I have been writing and what I have been saying in the past. I think if you have concrete examples, I'll be able to pretty much justify myself from there.
I'm definitely not in short supply, Professor Aki. You accuse the Catholic mafia in Cameroon.
Yes.
How can you call the Catholic Church a mafia when we all know that the Catholic Church has been speaking on behalf of Cameroonians? And Archbishop Nkea made that statement very clear when he made his last statement, or when he was addressing the Episcopal Council at the opening.
I think there's something wrong when we use the word Catholic and people don't understand what comes after it. If I say Catholic mafia or a Catholic gangster, that's the language in which I'm using. I'm first saying that I am talking about somebody who happens to be Catholic, who also happens to be a gangster, right? And my context of Catholic mafia, which I've explained, this is not the first time. I proceed from the fact that the president of the country, now the former president, who is an illegitimate president now, I proceed from the fact that he's a former Catholic seminarian, and some people want you to believe he's a devout Catholic. I proceed from the fact that his Secretary General, his Director of Civil Cabinet, his Minister of Defense, his Minister of Territorial Administration, his Minister of Justice, his Minister of Finance, the person he appointed to be the President of the Constitutional Council, perhaps the person who is in charge of the gendarmerie. I am saying that these people are professing Catholic. And for us, as Protestants and Muslims, we think that a person's religion is very definitive in the way they are formed. So you call them, most Muslims will say Christian nations or something of that sort. I am not saying the Catholic Church in Cameroon is a mafia. I am not saying the Catholic Church in the world is a mafia, but I'm definitely saying that the highest level of power in Cameroon is in the hands of people who worship as Catholics, and they go to church every day.
Let us get this clear, Professor Aki. First of all, Paul Biya is a legitimate president of Cameroon because he has taken oath of office. And
he's not the legitimate president of the country. He is an illegal president. He's an illegitimate president. When we interpret the principles of the Constitution of Cameroon, the highest principle is that of popular sovereignty, that power belongs to the people, and that when you go out to vote, one voter, one person, one vote, that's the way it operates. And so if you have an election such as you have right up to October 12, where it was established that the winner, based on all the data that we have and all the patterns we had and all the opinion polls that we had before it, when you get to that point, you realize that Mr. Issa Chiroma was set to be declared the president of Cameroon. Now, if somebody comes in and inflates and fabricates vote, which is not tied to any human being, a Cameroonian voter actually casting this vote, when that process is hijacked from there by somebody holding a gun to the officials who are supposed to pronounce Issa Chiroma Bakari as the winner, that process stops from there. It stops from being constitutional and legitimate from that process.
You don't have any evidence to the gun pointing on the head, do you?
That is a metaphor to say it has been reported and not refuted that on the eve of October 12, Mr. Biya had a meeting with the director of Elekam, and he was updated that the way the election is going, he is not going to win. And he said to the director, this is what is alleged. It has not been refuted. He said to the director, arrange the results so that I can win because I still have a few things to do.
Do you expect Mr. Biya to respond to all allegations that are made against him?
I think there is a vast amount of evidence to show that Mr. Biya did not win this election.
But about the allegation, do you want him to respond to all allegations like this one?
I have cited it in order to tell you that I have some reasonable ground to believe that.
But it is just an allegation, but you seem to be propagating this on the grounds that it has not been refuted. Do you want him to refute every allegation? There should be more than 1,000 allegations already about Mr. Biya and these elections.
I am saying that you can have a correlation of many factors which will point to you that the situation, we characterize that formally as an electoral suspect in which the person who was declared, who by compiling the results on the eve of October 12 won the election, that person has not been declared because Elekam that is supposed to put together, compile the result, has fabricated data. And some of them have been on video. There was a CPDM representative, I don't recall the name, is that the Honorable Ndang, who was a speaker of the parliamentary. He was referring to what happened in the West region. And when we realized that we had lost, we had to look for 50 million in order to modify the result. So there is ample evidence out there that there was tampering of the result between October 12 and the time when the results were pronounced. So there is no person who is interested. Everything we know, philosophically speaking, everything we can assert is based on probabilistic analysis.
Let us talk about the elections and the person who was declared winner in a moment. Let's come back to talk about the Catholic mafia. You just said it's a Catholic mafia, but you say it is not a Catholic church. It is a Catholic mafia that is leading Cameroon. But when you named those who are in the mafia, I did not hear the name of any Catholic cleric or leader of the Catholic Church. Why do you attach people who are doing their CPD politics to the Catholic Church?
Well, first of all, I say that, first of all, the world I come from is that if I tell people up front, I say, be careful, I'm a Protestant. And if you take that seriously, then you know a lot about me. So I can identify as a Protestant. Bia identifies as a Catholic. Paul Atanganji identifies as a Catholic. And some even say he goes to church twice a week and something of that sort. And recently, Mr. Paul Atanganji built a church house for a Catholic community in the South region. Recently, Betty Asomo used the Génie Militaire to build a church house, I don't know whether it was Obala, in the center region. These are people who have offices in government and who see themselves Catholic and who see themselves as former seminarians and so on. And this to the fore.
When you say they see themselves as Catholic, what do you mean?
They present themselves. They come to the church, they show themselves as Catholic. And they have alliances with the priest who would also welcome what they're doing.
Let's take this example.
Yes.
You are Protestant. I think it's Presbyterian.
And Baptist, in a way, the last couple of years, I worship with the Baptists. Yes.
Correct. You go to your job every day. Do you go to your job as a Baptist or as a Protestant or as a professor?
Well, I go to church. I go here. I work as a professor. But I know it is going to be helpful to anybody interacting with me to know that I'm a Protestant. I volunteer that information.
Do you think Atanganji goes to work every day with that same mentality? That is your mentality. That is how you present yourself. Does Atanganji Betty Asomo?
This is a philosophical point with some correlative factor. That means the philosophy you have about the structure of government, before you even open a book about political science, you get it from the church where you go to worship.
Tell us more.
That means if you're a Protestant, you probably grew up in a place where you have a committee, you have people carrying out elections, you have representatives who are doing this. So you're more likely going to naturally have an idea about decentralized government, about checks and balances, because if you are in a Presbyterian church in Cameroon, there is a pastor, there is a chairman of the session, there is a treasurer of the session, there is a chairman of the project committee. All of these people have different functions in such a way that it is difficult for all of them to come together and agree to take actions that will be negative and detrimental to the church itself. But if you grow up in a Catholic church, the first person you see is the priest who has centralized authority. These are historical things. These are philosophical things. They go all the way back. Protestants see themselves as followers of Augustine. Augustine of Hippo, his philosophy is kind of Platonist. It has a lot of dialogue involved in it. But the Catholics, their teachings are mostly based on the philosophy of Aristotle as refined by Thomas Aquinas. That structure is very systematic, hierarchical, structured, and centered. This philosophy of government becomes the first place where you learn about how to set up and run a government. So I have written in my book, Cameroon After Paul Biya, I make an analysis of the influence of religion on the politics of Cameroon. And my diagnosis is that Paul Biya is a victim. He is a victim of the culture in which he grew up in the sense of understanding the structure of power. But the actual things that he has done, the electoral fraud that he has carried out, that is his own effect on it. But this is in the political sciences, or you go back even to Montesquieu, you will see this analysis saying that the Protestant churches are inclined towards a decentralized government and an egalitarian government. The Catholic systems and countries, they are disposed towards a centralized government and authoritarian rule. Monarchy is more respected in that sense.
Someone who's a reading of the Second Vatican Council may disagree with you in principle on this. But what I want to bring out here is...
But and touch on something, the Second Vatican Council. For you to get to the Second Vatican Council, you have to know the journey through the 19th century to the Second Vatican Council.
The Second Vatican Council is the authority today.
Well, some people think the Second Vatican Council should not have happened. You have conservative Catholics. They first start by saying, We are protecting the Latin Mass, right? So you have people who are very conservative in that sense.
Let's discuss this in another conversation. It would be deeper than this, but
just to put in a context, I like the Second Vatican Council because that's the council now that begins to recognize that some of the things the Protestants were saying, there was some sense in it. And I would like to refer you to Father John Kutney, who was an American priest. He had started writing about democracy. And his point was that generally we think that Protestantism is an error, is heresy. But it looks like they have found something about human society that is positive. Look at the structure of the American Constitution. Look at their democracy. That's something valuable. So he started writing about this. At one point, the Vatican said, you have to stop writing about this topic. He was banned from that. And later on, he was allowed to write. He played a central role in formulating some of the resolutions of the Second Vatican Council. He gives us a particular reading of the transition from the 19th century, where, first of all, 1864, the church publishes what it calls the syllabus of errors. And the syllabus of errors is saying that things like freedom of expression, these are wrong things. Like constitutional democracy, they call it political Protestantism in a way. Oppose these things. And then 1870, you come up with the doctrine of the infallibility of the Pope. All of these are tied together with the idea of resisting constitutional democracy as not being something that is good for human society, monarchy as being good for human society. But when we get into the 20th century, and before you get to the Second Vatican Council, you have experience in Europe, fascism in Italy, fascism in France, fascism in Spain, and fascism in Germany, where Hitler, as a former Catholic, is still using many Jesuits around him to conceive his centralization of power based on what he saw from the church. And of course, he signed the Concordat with the Pope in order to get some of the powers that he had in Germany. So we are saying that it is a whole dynamics that is going through. The church is doing that with good intention. If you read my books, I say they start out with, if you look at Catholics, you look at the nuns, you look at people who suffer day and night to make sure they help the poor, they teach people, they give healthcare here. But their main problem is the conception of political power as being centralized and hierarchical.
Well, let's talk about this sometime in the future, but just to throw in something, that the Jesuits may be one of those who favor the decentralized form of the Catholic Church. We can talk about that in a different podcast, but let's go ahead to talk about the Catholic Church and the elections in Cameroon. In your response to Archbishop Nkea, you say, while people once dismissed my analysis, that is you, as the ramblings of a militant Protestant, they now see the intricate collaboration between this mafia and the priests who preach peace and unity after grave injustices are inflicted on the people. Archbishop Andrew, you are a typical example of the mechanism where the Catholic elite uses the priesthood to calm down the people. This is political Catholicism, which views constitutional democracy as heretical, and it is why Paul Biya, who entered government via a Catholic missionary's recommendation, remains president. Let us break this down.
Okay, quite a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot there. You start by saying that people are going to start accepting your thesis of the Catholic mafia. But in defending and explaining what the Catholic mafia is here, you've not brought any relationship between those you named in government and how they collude or collaborate with the church or with any bishops to stay in power. And that is how you end this paragraph of your statement to Archbishop Nkea. Is that not a way of saying that you are just putting things together to get at Bishop Nkea because your candidate, who is Issa Chiruma Bakari, is no longer in Cameroon?
No, not my candidate, the winner of the election, by the sovereign will of the people. Immaterial whether I support him or not, and even if I did not support him and he won the election, I will stand up for justice. But now let's come to the point that you make. First of all, I think what is the first point you want to get at? That I have not demonstrated.
You have highlighted and explained what the Catholic mafia is, but you've not shown that relationship. Yep.
I have tremendous respect for Archbishop Slater. He is with the people. He understands where things are going. I have tremendous for even former fighters, Jean-Marc Ella. The point I'm making is that where there is actual power, there is that tacit understanding of the centralized structure of power. And there is also the understanding that there is a mutual benefit between a particular political class and the church in a way. I would cite you the Archbishop of Yaoundé. Let us take this electoral season. What did you hear the Archbishop of Yaoundé say about the election? What did you hear the Archbishop say about the people who were killed on the street? What did you hear that bishop say about people who have been arrested? I consider the Archbishop of Yaoundé as the Archbishop who is the personal pastor of the members of the Catholic mafia. I might say the Catholic mafia. I'm not saying the Catholic Church is a mafia. I am saying that in Cameroon, everybody goes by their religion. It's a Muslim, it's a Protestant, it's an African folk religionist, it's a Catholic. That's the only use of Catholic that you can use in the connection to a mafia. I consider Biya and his group to be a mafia. And he elects his people, especially in these last years. I believe that there are two people in Cameroon who understand the intricate dance between religious ideology and politics. It's myself and Paul Biya, because he has been demonstrating that in the way he designs his government in this last year. He's careful. When he picks Lorenzo or he picks Paul Atanganji, he wants you to see ethnic diversity. And people focus on ethnicity. I don't focus on ethnicity. I focus on this idea that there is some solidarity in that if I have somebody who understands that loyalty is more important than justice, who understands that peace and unity is more important than justice and democracy, that person would be a kindred spirit in my ability to preserve what power I have in my hands. I am saying that the Archbishop of Yaoundé is closer to those in power that I have cited. I'm naming the Catholic mafia as those who have the highest office of power in Cameroon. They have been selected in a very special way in the last years of Paul Biya. Now, when I come to Archbishop Andrew Kia, I thought he could be doing a lot more as someone coming from the Anglophone minority, which has suffered over these years, Cameroon, right? But unfortunately, I don't see that he's demonstrating that sensibility to the situation.
Yeah, you keep insisting on the fact that these people have been selected because of their loyalty and the understanding of loyalty based on their learnings from the Catholic Church. Do you keep the fact that they have other affiliations in life? For example, they are mostly or all CPDM militants, and that loyalty also is a characteristic trait of the CPDM. Take, for example, Issa Chiruma Bakari, who has his own political party. He's a Muslim, but he demonstrated loyalty to Paul Biya even more than some of these Catholic Christians you are naming here.
Definitely, it is possible for you to be co-opted into the system. I only cite that right now, those who are making decisions to steal an election in Cameroon, they happen to be of the Catholic faith in the highest level. And I have come out, I have condemned Presbyterians and other Protestants who are participating in that. Nyat Njifenji is a Protestant. He should be able to condemn. He was in prison. Njifenji went to prison with Chiroma. There are even accounts that his conditions in prison were so bad that he needed somebody to read his Bible for him. And Chiroma volunteered to read the Bible for him. But this is the man who is now in the government. I come out and I say there are people who have been co-opted, but the core of the political power in Cameroon is Catholic. Whether we like it or not, I am not saying it's Catholic because it's run by the Catholic Church from Rome or it's run by the priest or all that. I am just saying that these are products of the Catholic faith. And when we are a multi-religious society, we want to see your morality in the public place. We want to see, oh, this guy is doing well. Oh, this guy is incorruptible. Oh, this guy is just. He's justice warrior. I will point out to you that we also see some of these traits in the people fighting for justice in this election, right?
So you recognize the fact that the Archbishop of Yaoundé has been quiet, but he is not the only bishop who has been quiet. Whatever the case, there is a National Episcopal Conference of the Bishops of Cameroon, and they issued a statement before Cameroon. That statement was largely welcomed by most Cameroonians. Why do you want all bishops to have the same modus of operation when they could operate using their own styles of operation?
As a political activist, I am more interested in structures of power. The Archbishop of Yaoundé is the most powerful Archbishop in Cameroon. That's what I'm looking at. And I know that my understanding from reading about political, religious influences in politics is that in whichever society you go in, you will find very good and very dedicated Catholics who are fighting on the side of the people. Unfortunately, these people tend to have not enough power to influence matters at a higher level. You can go to the Bishop of Bafoussam, you can go to the Bishop of Yagua, and so on. And you'll find that these people are in tune with the spirit of Cameroonians today who want justice and who want the immediate departure of the person who lost the election, Paul Biya. You will find that there are many of these. But my point is that those who are going to communicate, Cameroonians have to even push back because a scheme had been put together after we steal the election. Then we will try to get the Pope to visit Cameroon and bless everything. And then people will just forget. They will go from football, then they will go to the visit of the Pope, and then we will be talking about how everything
is that not why Archbishop Nkea asked Cameroonians to take their responsibilities into their own hands? Why should Cameroonians be depending on the Catholic Church or blaming the Catholic Church when the responsibility lies in the hands of Cameroonians?
Well, my problem there is that those who preach the word, they should be able to tune their messages, their prophetic message, with respect to what the people are experiencing, their spiritual predicament at a particular moment. They should be able to respond to that. When you read a passage you read. If you go to the Old Testament, the prophets are preaching only two things: the love of God and the pursuit of justice. It's everywhere, whether it's Isaiah, it's Jeremiah, and all of these prophets. That is the message of the Old Testament, which is refined even more in the New Testament. You have to be able to express that. And so, however you choose your sermons, in a couple of weeks, it will be possible for you to get to a point where you have to speak to the actual situation in the country. And when you're speaking there, we do not want, there is separation of church and state. But what we expect is that the politician who comes to church on Sunday sits with ordinary people, listen to the message. That is the only place you are able to unite them, to show them that, okay, this is what the gospel is saying. And this is what that means to your life, even as a trader on the street, as a politician who is making decisions. This is what practically it means for you. That's the place where the church has the ability to influence the politics by preaching to that. That's number one. And number two is that you have the right to bear witness to the truth. You cannot send people to go and monitor elections, and you have some findings from there, and then you're hiding behind the fact that they say, okay, this particular body can publish results, people cannot publish results, when we have social media flooded with results. Social media is flooded with results here and there. So they have the results, and they told people we were going to get the results. We want them to publish those results. And it's not just me, it's my Catholic friends as well who are saying that we want to see those results. And when you relate to another episode, I want to take you to Bamenda, where the apostolic nuncio was making an introduction, and he called Paul Biya president of Cameroon. What did the Catholic Christians do? They vote in the church to say, this is an untruth. We come here to get the truth from the gospel, but also the truth about what is going on in our society. So this is where the Christians are, the Catholic Christians are, and other people, other Christians and Muslims and African folk religionists are in Cameroon. So, but anybody who is in a position of moral authority has to bear witness to the truth of the times. That's my point there.
I get your point. But you also note that after the elections, the Archbishop of Bamenda, Andrew Mkeya, who is the president of the Bishops' Conference of Cameroon, published a report stating that they applied for 302 accreditations, but they only got 202, I think. And that made it impossible for them to cover the whole territory and to also have a reasonable report to give. That is one point. Now, the second point is these observers don't come away with results tally sheets. So what do you want him to publish? The results are signed, the PVs are signed by the representative political parties, and these are dispatched only amongst them. Observers don't get a copy. So what do you want him to publish?
Well, whatever is transcribed in those reports is first of all displayed on the board. That's how they do counting in Cameroon. It's displayed on the board. And sometimes the totals are written there. That's what has been going around in social media. So, but if you think that you are not going to have access to that kind of result, then you don't want to give people the notion that you're going to be there to attest to that. I call your attention to 2018 when some citizens of Israel with a secondary passport were brought in to pretend to be Transparency International. That was my independent resource, a research to establish that these people were technically Israeli with different passports. They were brought in by the ministry or whoever to say that the elections went well. So the question is, the Catholic Church sending observers to play that kind of role, to say, okay, minor irregularities here, but overall it was a peaceful election.
The bishops did not say that there were minor, but the overall did not count. The bishops were very emphatic that were irregularities, large-scale abstentions from voting. But you asked in your rebuttal that they should publish results. Where would they get the results from? Unless you want them to...
But let's even take Mezam, for example. There is a lot of ballot stuffing that took place in Mezam. So could the church not realize that Ambazonia blocking people from going out to vote will create the conditions for the regime to stuff ballot in these places? We worked with people who have allied with Campto's party in Menchum. We managed in Menchum to hold the voter turnout to about 20%, 19.6 to be exact. I think roughly that was the kind of turnout that was able to prevent the people from stuffing the ballot. Archbishop Mkeya sits in Bamenda, and Mezam is projecting this kind of outrageous results in support of Paul Biya. So there must be something wrong there. There must be something that has to push people to ask themselves, did we bear witness enough?
How do you expect them to bear witness enough when they applied for 304 accreditations and were just given 202 accreditations? Then they could observe in about 12,000 polling stations, but they had just about 200 people throughout the country. So,
well, I guess the process of even approving is a political process. You have to understand. The thing is that if you are a prophetic witness, especially a spiritual person, for example, I'm a political activist. This is the way I deal with politicians. I know all of them are egoistic. Now, of course, some of them will tell you I'm humble, I'm not egoistic. I will say, okay, until you have a clash or a failure somewhere, you will see your ego come to the surface. I assume that all of them are egoistic. I assume that all of them are going to try to lie to you. Then my question becomes, how do I harness even these weaknesses for them to become beneficial for the people? You don't start out by assuming that they are angels. You start out by assuming they're going to try to cheat here and they have the opportunity. It's up for you to put in some obstacles here and there. And anybody who has seen how Paul Biya has preserved himself in Cameroon should be approaching an election with that understanding that these guys are going to cheat. They are not going to approve my lists. And then the best place I am going to try to get them to listen is that I will sound an alarm at the level they are not approving my list. There must be a reason why they don't want to approve my list.
Professor Aki, are you not discounting your own hypothesis here, where you say the Catholic Church is colluding with the bishops or is collaborating with the Ministry of Territorial Administration at Tanganji to rig the elections? But then again, you say Atanganji, who gives these accreditations, is not going to let the Catholic Church see what they're doing on the field?
Well, my first point is an ideological point. The ideological point is that in political Catholicism, peace and unity are higher principles. So when you subscribe to that with good intentions, I am not denying that the Catholic Church, whatever they have done politically, they do that with good intentions to promote the welfare of mankind. But that principle is aligned in such a way that it works against justice in the world. And so from the perspective, I think when you talk about justice, we think that we Protestants, we can easily resonate with Muslims on questions of justice as being higher than peace, because they generate peace actually. So if you just by nature subscribe to the idea of peace and unity, and you come out after an election, when the government is saying that those who are going to protest and ask for the truth, when the government characterizes them as terrorists, when you come out and amplify your message of peace and unity, you become an ally of the government without knowing. But if this is my point, if throughout the history of mankind, Catholic intellectuals have been able to realize that the Protestants, they talk about justice, they talk about the law, they talk about democracy. These things are so personal to them. Until the 20th century, the word democracy was dirty in Catholic circles. It was dirty. So, but
let's look about it in another podcast, as I said.
So this point, I'm saying that ideologically, because they subscribe to peace and unity as being higher than justice and democracy, they naturally find themselves being an ally, because Bia understands that. He studied in the seminary. He intuitively understands that once you have carried out theft, once you have cheated the people, you invoke an army of people who are already ideologically prepared to sing the chorus of peace and unity.
You have made the difference in ideological understanding of Catholics on the one hand, the Muslims and the Protestants on the other hand. Let's take this example. Before the elections, Ngongo invited almost all key stakeholders in Cameroon. There were the Catholics, there were the Muslims. But all of them came out from there singing one message: peace and unity before, during, and after the elections. So why is the Catholic message here different?
Well, again, I am very ideologically Protestant, and I would tell you that even the Protestants in Cameroon, they are still struggling to understand what Protestantism is all about. We see centralization in the Presbyterian Church right now. The Presbyterian Church, the leader of any Presbyterian church around the world, is called moderator. It's not called president. It's not even called chairman. It's to get it into your head that you are not here to dictate to anybody. You are here to moderate debate up to a vote. The vote is what is going to be the decision. But if you look at the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon and you look at the way the moderator is operating, I would think that he's a Catholic bishop.
And for that, you blame the Catholic Church again, or you
blame the hegemony. The hegemony in Cameroon today is a hegemony that is inspired by the philosophy of power, which is centralized, which is...
If the philosophy of power of the Presbyterian Church cannot hold firm within the Presbyterian Church, don't you think there is something wrong with the Presbyterians themselves?
Well, everybody, Cameroon, for the 43 years we have been under Paul Biya, you have to examine yourself, because there's a little bit of Paul Biya in you everywhere. There's a little bit of Paul Biya in us. We will have to cleanse ourselves once this man leaves. I am saying that over the years, and I grew up in a church with a very old pastor who started as a catechist and worked with the missionaries from Switzerland. And my learning of Protestantism from him is way different from what I find from many of the modern pastors in the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon. I would say he was more of a Protestant than the modern pastors in Cameroon. I say this just as a comment. But over the years, the culture in Cameroon, whether it's the chief, whether it's even the imam, right? Whether it's the imam, all of this, they're influenced by the hierarchical structure of power and the emphasis on peace and unity at the expense of justice, at the expense of democracy, that has been driven by a very, very intelligent man who came out of the Catholic tradition. He came into government highly recommended by Dr. Louis Paul Ojula. Louis Paul Ojula came to Cameroon around 1935, 1936 as a Catholic missionary. And in 1946, this Dr. Louis Paul Ojula was at the United Nations speaking to them on behalf of the people of Cameroon. He was now the politician representing us.
You know, but you also understand that at the same time, they decided to drop Amarim Bida, who was possibly, I don't know, a Catholic, for Amado Ahidjo, who is a Muslim.
Oh, this is 1958. It was a tactical, it was a strategic choice by France. And if you look at Andre Marimbida and his friends at the seminary, for example, Abe in Congo, who became the president there, he was a friend of Marimbida. And there was the other guy who was killed in Central Africa. So many of the leaders who were going to take over the independence of these countries, they were going to come out mostly, naturally, they were going to come out from the seminary. Now, what happened in Cameroon? Why was Andre Marimbida dropped? And people want to say that he was more patriotic and that's why he was dropped. And then Ahidjo was picked up for that. The thing is that in 1958, there was a commissioner sent from France to Cameroon. I think Jean Ramadier is his name. He lasted only 3 weeks. But what he did in Cameroon transformed the history of Cameroon for the rest of up to our moment now. This guy was a socialist. He came and he looked at how the war, the underground war launched by UPC, how it was still supported mostly by the people. He asked the question, why are the people supporting this? So he realized the people are supporting because they are eager to get independence as soon as possible. The people are supporting because they like the idea of reunification of British Cameroon and French Cameroon. These two ideas were not supported by Andre Marimbida. So Andre Marimbida was against the reunification of Cameroon and French Cameroon. And in fact, many Catholics in former French Cameroon were of that view. If you treat UPC as being mostly made up of Protestants, you will understand that there was an ideological divide even on the question of reunification or not. So Andre Marimbida was against reunification, and he thought we were not ready for independence. He would have been happy for an independence that would have come in 1970 or so. But this socialist, Jean Ramadier, he said the only way we can defeat UPC is by taking their program and making it a political program of France. Whether we like it or whether we actually mean it or not, we have to, in words, say that. So he went to the Territorial Assembly and made the speech that Cameroon is going to become independent in 2 years. And then if the British people want to join us, then we will have a reunification. France is not opposed to that. He had already seen that Andre Marimbida was already suffering from charges of dictatorship, authoritarianism, and his majority was shrinking in the Territorial Assembly. That's where they saw that bringing Ahidjo had a strategic advantage of disconnecting the North from the UPC, which was around the littoral area. So it was a tactical move that was made at this time. And if you go back the history of how did Ahidjo become a politician, he was not interested in politics. He was specially recruited because of the region from which he came. And there are records which show that the first election Ahidjo took part in, he could not win. Nobody knew him. They just stopped the ballot and gave it to him because they needed him. And all along, he had been an instrument in that alignment.
Thank you. I want us to talk about the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon. But before that, you close your critique of Archbishop Nkea in these words: choose truth and justice today over the Catholic mafia. Freedom is coming to Cameroon, and those standing with the oppressors will regret their lack of courage. You know the truth, but you lack the courage to bear witness to it. The Protestants and the Muslims definitely also know the truth, and they're not bearing witness to it. Why are you only advising Archbishop Nkea on the threats that are coming?
That was a specific response to something that he had said, and many Catholics are responding to him as well. Some of them are priests. So
but at least
let me finish.
The Catholic Church wrote a communique about the elections. Have you had any communique from the Council of Imams of Cameroon or from the Protestant movement?
I have not yet said anything about the imams. About 2 weeks ago, or maybe last week, I had a message about the Protestants, and I was very disappointed with them. So I expressed that. I told them you have not lived up to that, up to the expectation. I spoke to them. And I even singled out the Presbyterians from Momo, because I think the current moderator is from Momo, Muna is from Momo, Teki Caxton is from there. Sister in the CPDM, Rose Mbaacha, she's from Momo. She was part of the ballot stuffing in her region, right? So this criticism I've made. So when I'm an activist, and when I see something, I will criticize at that point and point out and say, you have a role to play. That role, change and you what is right. So I have had a critical message addressed to the Protestant, all of them, and mostly picking on the Presbyterians for failing totally to live up to expectation here. Now, I understand sometimes they will tell you we don't communicate on everything public. We don't even do that. But the Catholic Church that has the habit of commenting on everything that is happening in the society most of the time, you want to see that this is not just a side comment, it's a comment that is coming from commitment to make sure that politics, which is the highest form of charity, we are called upon to show charity. But politics is the highest form of charity. If you want to help the poor, you want to help the sick, you want to help those who are uneducated to find a way to express themselves, then the best way to do is to make sure that politics is done right. And when there is a mistake there, take the courage, because the benefits are so huge. And imagine, because that's what I quoted there, if right now Mr. Chiroma were the president of Cameroon, the conflict in former Southern Cameroon will have a totally different dynamic. People will no longer be dying in the way they are dying now. Politics is the highest form of charity, and a church which is in the business of charity, the least you can do is to have a sermon in your church and say, I have not heard a Catholic priest come out and say, we are so disappointed that Paul Atanganji, you are our brother. Look at what you have done. Look at what you're doing. You are insulting people. You are stirring up trouble, right? So this is what I'm calling them to. I will not spare Protestants. I will not spare Muslims. I will have to admit, subjectively, I'm a Protestant. And so even if there is an objective fact about the Catholic Church and it comes out, you will see a little bit of my Protestantism there. I say it up front. I don't want people to take me to be a model of objectivity. Each time a Protestant has an opportunity to protest, they will say something. And they might just be saying, I don't want to go back to Rome or something of that sort. There is always that element in it. I am very grateful that you brought this up, because what I want is for our Catholic brothers and sisters to challenge us so that in trying to refine our arguments, the essence that we are trying to articulate, maybe not with the perfect articulations, then we'll bring it out. If there is one thing we have clarified here, is that the Catholic Church in Cameroon is not a mafia, but the people who have the instruments of power, the vast majority of them are Catholics. And they go to church, they build church houses like Betty Asomo I mentioned, or like a Tanganji, right? So that is my argument. My argument is I want to see my Catholic brothers and sisters bemoaning the idea that some of their brothers and sisters in the highest places of power have brought disgrace on the church. That's the point I want to see coming from my brothers and sisters who care about the fact that their church is always trying to do the best for the world. That I don't disagree. If it comes down to one thing, I would say that the picture of power as being centralized, hierarchical, that is the single most important thing that if I could advise the Catholic to modify and make sure that it changes, they would do. I have also admitted in my book that the Pope, even with the centralized power that the Pope has, is constrained by the Bible. The ordinary Christian can judge the Pope based on the principles in the Bible. But a secular power like Paul Biya, who copies from the immense power enjoyed by the Pope, is constrained by nothing. The Constitution means nothing to him. Truth means nothing. He lies effortlessly. He steals without any remorse. So that is a total perversion of the Catholic Church ecclesiastical system in a political setting. It happens over and over and over around the world.
The Catholics continue praying for the Pope, the bishops, and the priests every day at Mass, and that prayer must continue until God hears the prayers of Cameroonians to redeem Cameroon from the hands of the dictators. Thank you so much, Ben Aki. Let us switch gears now and talk about the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon. My first question is relevant.
The Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon is very relevant, and especially being operated by Cameroonians in the diaspora, it brings on much more significance to that. So why do we call it the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon? We understand power in Cameroon or in any country to belong to the people. The people are the sovereign. And when there is a state of exception in the political system of a country, the sovereign has to decide. Now, some theories say the sovereign cannot be multiple people because how will multiple people decide when there is an exception? Therefore, you should take sovereignty and put in the hands of one person, which is a very tyrannical idea to bring to the surface. So we're saying that if power belongs to the people of Cameroon and their sovereignty has been stolen in this election, it is up to them to organize themselves and resist and reclaim and liberate their country, reclaim that sovereignty. And how do you do that? The whole population cannot just massively come out and then carry out that. I think there's an interesting analogy of this by the philosopher David Hume. He says, you can arrange with your neighbor to fix the gutter around your house. It's very easy. Two of you can talk about that. But how do you get 1,000 people to agree on anything? So that is the collective action problem the Council for the Sovereignty is trying to solve here. We are a civil society which sits together and imagine what would the people do here to reclaim their power. And then we bring the suggestion to the people. We try to empower those who are carrying out the work to actually make sure that the keys to Itudi are taken from Pobia and given to Issa Chiroma Bakari. Because Chiroma has done his part. He went to the election.
Whose election was stolen? Chiruma's election, or the people contest an election? Chiroma was a candidate.
No, the people are the ones who govern themselves. They're governed by delegation, they're governed by representative government. So when Chiroma comes, when people come, they contest, they say, vote for me, we'll do this. The people say, okay, I like your plan. I am going to choose you to serve as president for 7 years. I am the boss. I'm the one giving you the power. And you are serving my interest. So the election, as much as the name of Chiroma, there might be some kind of glory that goes with that. The fact is that the people of Cameroon are hiring him to do a job. They remain the boss. If the job is well done, they benefit. So it's their election.
Yeah, you just said the candidate comes and makes pledges and the people decide to vote on that pledge. One of the pledges that Chiroma made was, I will defend my victory, or I will defend the results from the ballot box, even if it means taking my blood. But it's been 3 months. Chiroma is out of scene, and you're talking about Cameroonians here again.
Yes, well, let's say that is to analyze what he meant by I would defend the victory. Is basically, I would contribute what I can in that fight. And
but what is he?
He is in Gambia, and that's the best thing that happened to the people of Cameroon. He could be in Kondenge, quiet, shut up, and completely disconnected from the people. But
he's in the Gambia, but he's quiet, he's shut up, and he's disconnected from the people.
He is in the Gambia, and his spokesperson is Maître Barrister Alice Nkom. Today we had a meeting. We had a meeting of the Council for the Sovereignty. We communicate, we in contact with these people. So he is in the Gambia as the president-elect, waiting to take the keys to Itudi, and the people are working, and his spokesperson is there providing. Is the leadership optimal? That's a different question. We can ask whether the coordination has been optimal. I would say any politician who says, I am going to free Cameroon by my might, you should run away from that kind of assertion, or you should take it to be a political expression that I will not betray you, because pretty much he could decide to go and become prime minister for Paul Biya. There is the option that he could have come to an agreement with Paul Biya to be his prime minister. There, the people would have lost. So the fact that he has not accepted the post of prime minister, the fact that he has also put himself in a condition where the government cannot easily kill him, because the government could do that and say, okay, talking so much about this president, what if I take the life of the president? Then the discussion is all over. And he said, Kane is dead. He was arrested and deprived of his medication. And this very president, Mr. Issa Chiroma, the president-elect of Cameroon, the legitimate president of Cameroon, while he was a candidate, Biya sent state agents, people who are supposed to be working for the state of Cameroon, to go and threaten him, to tell him, if you don't drop the campaign rhetoric, if you continue to campaign vigorously, such as to embarrass me in this election, after the election, we will put you in prison. And we know that you are sick. And we know that this is going to happen to you. So they were saying already that we intend to steal the election. And we intend to put you in prison. You embarrass us. But the best for you is not to even embarrass us here and let us steal the election with minimal loss. So we have it on record that this is what happened.
So you recently issued a resolution on January 4. That resolution, you said it be resolved that the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon declares Cameroon to be experiencing an electoral suspense accompanied by a state of political occupation that is orchestrated by an illegal and illegitimate president. This is the case because the winner of the presidential election, Mr. Issa Chiroma Bakari, is in exile, while the loser, Mr. Paul Biya, is exercising presidential power by force and with impunity in total disregard of the will of the sovereign people of Cameroon. Then you go further. This characterization of the political and constitutional situation of Cameroon shall be communicated to friendly nations and relevant international organizations, thereby justifying any actions undertaken by Cameroonians to end the occupation within a couple of months. What we know is that key powers in the world already know what is happening in Cameroon. But what I want us to talk about is when you say that they would understand why actions have been undertaken by Cameroonians to end the occupation. What actions are you talking about?
Well, the people of Cameroon are sovereign, and their sovereignty has been taken. It's just like Chad or Nigeria would attack Cameroon right now. That's the state we are in. Mr. Biya has overwritten the will of the sovereign people of Cameroon, and he is governing the country against the will of these people. That is the characterization of political occupation. The actions that are available to the people of Cameroon extend from peaceful action to military action. Nothing is excluded from the possibility. Now, of course, you can talk about diplomatic action, but I don't count so much on those diplomatic action. I think that the people of Cameroon have many mechanisms at their disposal, properly coordinated, they can bring to bear. My preference is nonviolent direct action, such as which would, for example, bring to the streets of Cameroon 1 to 3% of the people in a sustained manner and will bring down this regime. It knows that that is going to be fatal to a totally illegitimate and illegal government. That's one possibility.
And what is the
other possibility? Is right now, the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon brings together all Cameroonians, and we're listening to everybody. And we know people who are passionate about the fact that now, if you had the possibility, if you had the ability anywhere in Cameroon to arrest Mr. Paul Atanganji in the name of the people of Cameroon, I would ask you to go ahead and do it, and the people of Cameroon will be grateful for you doing that. So military action is possible, and there are people, there are patriots who are organizing their efforts aligned in that direction. I think it is less efficient and less necessary because I believe very much in massive protest to be able to bring down the regime. But nonetheless, we want to make a philosophical point to say that if a people is occupied, if they're experiencing political occupation, if their sovereignty has been taken hostage, they have the right of self-defense, and they can undertake any action to free themselves. But we have to be clear that even that military action is bound by certain international instruments that they have to abide by, such things as not violating, not bringing about crimes against humanity or war crimes.
That is clearly stated in the resolution. I think it's resolution 3.1. You
Yes.
are very clear that armed groups shall have complied with the international rules governing armed conflicts with respect to prohibition against war crimes and crimes against humanity. But from the general perspective, how much have Cameroonians bought into the idea of the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon?
So the diaspora, anybody who comes across it is saying this is the right thing. We should be working hard on that. The question is, are we coordinating ourselves? Right now, we are beginning to organize ourselves by country. There is a group in Canada, there's a group in the US, there's a group in the UK, there is one in the Scandinavia, and we are still coordinating the many voices in France and in Belgium to come together. But things are beginning to align in the proper direction for these actions to be fruitful.
So you aligning the groups, and we know how difficult it is to bring political communication between Cameroonians. Those who are attached to their political parties don't want to hear about another movement, be it civil society or another political party that is organizing something that could be organized by the political party. So how are members of political parties receiving the council?
Well, the council is a civil society initiative. This is like a town council. If you call a town council to tell the Cameroonians come, except that we are organizing this in freedom and convenience in the diaspora, this is a town council, everybody comes. Now, those who are political party, you have to examine the political parties in Cameroon today. Where do they stand? If somebody is SDF, is that person regretting conditions in which their party is now found, or almost taken hostage, the leadership of the party? If somebody is in Cabral Alibi's party, what is it that they are fighting for? What do they stand for? So at this point, let me remind you that of Cameroonians, less than 15% belong to a political party. So we are really dealing with the people themselves who are taking up the positions that is needed to get the majority. We say, if you're expressing the sovereignty of Cameroon, it must always be something that you say, if we put up this thing for a vote, we will get majority of the people supporting it. That is our philosophical guide.
So this is a diasporan movement. How does it connect with the home front?
So we have, in the recent weeks, in the recent days, made aware of organizing, who are going from region to region and from town to town, and from quarter to quarter, organizing people for the ultimate actions that the citizens will have to undertake. I cannot say much about that, but I want to say that this is going to be a coordinated initiative where the Council for the Sovereignty will be providing the ideas that mobilize the diaspora here. Everybody in the diaspora is supposed to contribute to this initiative. They will bring the intellectual ideas and they will bring the financial support. And this financial support will go to actions in Cameroon with the aim of maximum mobilization from block to block, to quarter, door to door, to make sure that the way people feel, they know that that is the same way other people feel, and we are not helpless. As people, we can organize and take our sovereignty back from those who have stolen it.
You've touched on a few issues. You know that organizing such a movement in Cameroon is a death penalty. So how protected are those who are going to be coordinating this movement in Cameroon?
Well, I will tell you this. Our brothers and sisters in the military, our brothers and sisters even in higher offices, even some in these ministries of Paul Biya, they know that we are experiencing an electoral suspense. They know that the president-elect, the legitimate president, is in exile, and that is not good for Cameroon. They want to contribute in their own ways, and you will be surprised in what ways they are contributing to this. The point is
contributing to this.
Well, they are helping. I cannot tell you everything here, but
I know you cannot tell me everything on points of strategy and
yes.
And security.
Our
but
point is,
the viewers want to be sure that this is a movement that represents them and can have a sustainable future, because this is not the first initiative around this that has whistled out of the air.
Yes, so we hope that we will not. We hope that in the weeks ahead, it will become clearer that this is not an initiative. This is half-baked, and that is going to go away.
What should Cameroonians be counting on? What should that hope be?
Well, the first hope is that if you're a Cameroonian, you have to say publicly who the winner of that election is. That is the beginning of the protest movement. We're here, and then you wait for the neighborhood, organizing your neighborhood. Tell people, for example, it should be a simple position. Ask yourself, if there were a protest today to bring back the president who won the election so that he can take office, would you morally support that protest? That's the first question. Would you morally support that protest? If the answer is yes, you are in tune with the sovereign will of Cameroon, with the will of the sovereign people of Cameroon. Then the next question is that, yes, I know you morally support this protest, but would you actually join to make this protest? We hope that you will be able to answer that question in the affirmative. And the best way to answer that question in affirmative is to, first of all, tell your brother, I think if there were a protest today, I will go out and protest. And I will feel more comfortable and more protected if you come with me. Are you going to come with me? So you have to be a mobilizer yourself. First, morally recognize that it is wrong for the loser of the election to be exercising power while the winner of the election is hiding in exile for the only crime of presenting himself to an election and winning that election. So you have to get to that point where we are mobilizing one another along those lines. But I want to assure you that in Cameroon, there are people, they may not be saying much, but they are willing to help the people of Cameroon, because there are even people, I will tell you, there are people who are not even very political in the past. They call me and they ask me, is it over? It would be a shame if this is over, because this is so blatant. Nothing like this has ever happened in history. That kind of landslide victory has never happened in history in Cameroon, so that people can see clearly that we are governed by thieves. So this is what has happened now. And I tell you, there are people who have a conscience who say it is impossible for me to bring up my children and tell them that telling lies is not good. It is impossible for me to say that when we have a government that has pretty much just imposed itself on the people of Cameroon, contrary to the total defeat in an election. So the mobilization is there and things are beginning to align. And I will tell you, the Council for the Sovereignty is doing the work to get the diaspora together and then to try to tell people, I know there are some people who believe so much in diplomacy. That's not my passion. I know there are other people who believe very strongly that we should go straight to military. I tell them it's too early and it's too inefficient at this particular stage. What I believe in is that people who are sovereign, they are able to organize themselves and then actions. But we want to say that anybody who is counting on shooting any Cameroonian who is protesting will not be in anywhere near a government office in a couple of months. We intend to succeed, and we will succeed. And anybody who is against the people of Cameroon, demonstrated through whatever behavior they have, it's going to be clear that they won't have a job. Not only that, they will not have a job and they will face the music of the law to the fullest extent. That's what the civil society is for. If the civil society is organized and strong, it is generally more attuned to the moral will of the people of that country. And so what we are trying to do is to say the civil society in the diaspora through this Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon, and when actions will start, you will hear the name of the group of the mobilizing movement in Cameroon that is bringing together people to make sure that all over the national territory, we will have the critical mass that is needed to kick out the thieves who have taken our country captive.
Thank you so much, Professor Ben Aki. Let us meet again in 2 weeks to discuss in detail what the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon is, their philosophy, their achievements, and the next steps, and why Cameroonians should adhere. Does that sound like a plan?
Thank you very much. Maybe I will be able to bring other people from our council to enrich the discussion, but we're very optimistic about this. And I thank you for serving the people of Cameroon in this critical information ministry, because it helps the Cameroonians to realize that the battle is not over. In fact, the battle is only properly defining itself. If there is anything we believe is that this is not going to be accepted. The question is just, if the sovereign is so many people, how do you coordinate? And that piece is coming together. And I'm very glad about what we see. So there is hope ahead. And if I were to advise Paul and Chantal Bia, is please start packing. You will have to leave A2D. There is no other way you will leave A2D.
Thank you very much for coming to the Beyond Africa podcast, Professor Ben Aki. See you in 2 weeks.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for the invitation.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Beyond Africa podcast with Professor Ben Aki. We've discussed his reaction to the bishops of Cameroon, particularly Archbishop Andrew Mkeya, and we've also discussed the Council for the Sovereignty of Cameroon. You've understood what it is, but we have an in-depth conversation coming up in 2 weeks where he will detail more, and possibly he will be with other members of the Council. That is what we talk about here. What a time to be alive.